Guys, how's everybody doing this afternoon? Crazy breaking news out of Giants camp on this snowy day up here in the Northeast. Landon Collins has cleared out his locker. He has confirmed that he is not going to be back with the New York Giants. I think that this situation is beyond repair. I don't know how even the Giants could have had contact with Landon Collins, but it's official that he's probably going to be gone. Probably a 95% chance because Landon's such an emotional guy, and pretty much he cleaned out his locker. He's informed people on Twitter. He's informed people everywhere that he will not be a part of the New York Giants going forward. Dave Gettleman is a guy that evaluates the tape, and what Dave Gettleman saw was Landon Collins being slow in coverage. And Landon Collins is going to be expensive. I think, like, as a safety, he could go for $13, $14 million a year. He's a hard-hitting safety. He's a premier name. He was, in 2016, really his breakout season. He was in line to possibly be the defensive player of the year when we went 11-5 and made the playoffs. He did have Ben McAdoo there during his tenure. Now, he was a guy that called out Eli Apple. He's a very vocal guy, very emotional player. Sometimes those emotions might boil out into negative emotions. We don't know. We're not in closed doors. Hearing Landon in interviews and things, I think Landon is a good guy. I think that Collins was a pretty good teammate. He's just not the fastest guy to play in the secondary. And he definitely has a big personality. And a lot of guys rally to him. And then some guys are going to think that he's just overly vocal or overly a leader in that sense. Like calling out Eli Apple, for example, while we enjoyed it because we got an insight into the team, I don't know if it was the best way to go about trying to lead Eli Apple. And Landon Collins is still going to go through this league, still going to grow. I think he would even be better, and Cop Pizzle has said this in his videos. Cop Pizzle, I think, is right on this topic, that he might even be a better linebacker because Mark Barron, also from Alabama, was a linebacker as well. And Landon would be very good in a cover 3 scheme. He's like a Cam Chancellor. He's a big hitter, and he's not good. He's good when it's cover 3 and when he's down in the box playing against the run and playing in the flat and hitting people hard. But in this NFL, it's hard to hit people. And then also in this NFL, you know, it's definitely turned into like a little bit of ice skating on grass. It's definitely filled with faster slot receivers. And Landon Collins is definitely not a modern safety because he's not that fast. He's not like an Eric Berry. He's not a Malik Hooker or an Eddie Jackson that's just a ball-hawking safety. He's a guy that comes into the box and hits. So now that Landon Collins is going to be gone, there is a chance that Olivier Vernon, who barely played throughout the first games of the season, he was hurt pretty much the whole year. I know he missed the first 4 games. This is a guy that I think you're paying near $20 million. And I know that Chris the Entertainer, you should go to his channel because he has a lot more knowledge on the salary cap situation. But it's possible that the Giants could be saving maybe like near $8 or $9 million by cutting Olivier Vernon next year. I think that Jack Rabbit is going to be back because with Jack Rabbit Jenkins, I think he's about $14 million. And then you are saving about $8 million there. And Jack Rabbit is still a decent cornerback in the NFL. But Landon Collins leaves. I think fans are going to, definitely miss Landon. And I definitely liked Landon Collins a lot. And I'm happy that he was here for the Giants. It's a little sad that It's a little bit sad that he couldn't work out the rest of his career, but I'm not devastated because Landon's play was very inconsistent. And other than that tremendous year that he had in 2016, he's just been okay. He's been very spotty. He's been up and down and very inconsistent. And he's going to make a ton of money, and I'm happy for him in that regard. And then in terms of his leadership and things on the field, it hasn't always been the smoothest in New York, and I think that Landon's gonna be in a good place. I think Landon's excited for this move, and he's going to have a great NFL career wherever he goes. So I want to thank Landon Collins for being a Giant, and he was a pretty classy New York Giant and a guy that definitely brought great effort to the field. And again, I wish Landon nothing but the best. Let's get into the other rumors here. So we have one rumor from Jay Glazer, and we have one rumor from Colin Cowherd. And the one rumor from Colin Cowherd, I think, is it's more interesting and it could have more legs. And I'll explain why the Cowherd rumor could possibly be true. And then, of course, it could always be false because it's a rumor. So, Russell Wilson. Let's think about Russell Wilson in Seattle. Russell Wilson, to me, is an elite level player. I love the way that Russell conducts himself on and off the field. Faith is definitely a big portion of his life. He was a guy that was a very small quarterback that had a lot of success at NC State. He's a dual sport athlete. He's a tremendous baseball player as well. I think he was a shortstop. And Russell Wilson was a guy that was also at North Carolina State, and then he went to Wisconsin for his last year in the Big Ten Conference. Russell then went to Seattle. He was tremendous. Very clutch player, but he had the Legion of Boom there. But he was an exceptional game manager, I'll say that. He was able to break contain. Even in his rookie season, he was spectacular. Down 14-0 against the Redskins, he was able to bring the Seahawks back, and he was able to win that playoff game in his first year. Against the Redskins at a packed FedEx Field. Then he played Matt Ryan, and Atlanta was winning, I believe, maybe like 24-14. And Russell Wilson was able to score 2 late touchdowns in the fourth quarter. He is tremendous late in ball games, Russell Wilson, especially big playoff football games. Russell Wilson is one of the clutchest quarterbacks, I believe, in the NFL. He only had one hiccup in his entire career, and that was a decision that wasn't even his fault. It was his offensive coordinator, Darrell Bevell's fault. They should have ran the ball at the 1-yard line. But when you look at Russell Wilson as a quarterback, this is a guy that puts up elite numbers. I think his completion percentage was sky high this year. He's pretty much been working with just okay talent. I know he had Jimmy Graham, who's a very good player, and Doug Baldwin, when he's healthy, is a very, very good receiver, and Tyler Lockett. But Russell Wilson, other than having Marshawn Lynch, after Marshawn Lynch, there hasn't really been great running backs. Russell Wilson does a great job, especially with his offensive line being very spotty. He's tremendous at getting outside the pocket. Russell Wilson also has an elite deep ball where he puts perfect arc on the football and he can get the football out to just about every location. His leadership skills are very, very good. Now, it is possible. I'm not saying that this is the case because I'm more on the other side of this argument. I'm more on the side that I think Russell Wilson is a very good leader. But there is a case to be said that Russell Wilson, very humble guy, driven to faith. He did not connect with Richard Sherman in that defense, Michael Bennett, Sherman, and those guys. So there was a disconnect there with how Russell and the defense was able to communicate. And some people, including Richard Sherman, have famously called him kind of fake. Because on the outside, you look at his social media, you look at things that Russell does for the community, and he seems like literally a goody two-shoes or a perfect character. But it is possible Russell Wilson now dating Sierra, dating this famous actress. It's possible that fame has gotten to Russell Wilson a little bit and he could have an ego. And I'm sure Sherman would tell you that. And Sherman's a smart Stanford guy. So there is that little bit of backlash. But overall, I'm not really that worried about it. And there is rumors that Russell Wilson could want out of Seattle. And if he wants out of Seattle, what better place to go to than the New York Giants? Eli Manning is getting older. The Giants fans want a change at the quarterback position. Pat Shurmur is an offensive head coach, a younger head coach. Sierra would love New York City. When you're in the Pacific Northwest, you're sometimes buried in the upper left quadrant of the country. And The NFC East is an easier division to navigate. You have the Redskins that are kind of a mess here with their coach and quarterback situation. The Dallas Cowboys are a very good football team, but they're eventually going to have to pay Dak Prescott. They're mostly a team built on defense, so they're probably not going to be around for 3 or 4 years. The Eagles are going through a transition phase with a lot of their players and a lot of quarterbacks. So the NFC East is easier to navigate because you have the Rams and you have Kyle Shanahan and Sean McVay out west, and I think that those teams are great. I think that San Fran is ready to take a leap, and the LA Rams every year pump out 11 or 12 wins, and they have Todd Gurley and great offensive linemen, and Les Snead has been doing an outstanding job the last few years. So the NFC East is easier to navigate. You've been in Seattle your whole life. You've watched half the team leave the football team. Your defense is trending down. The whole organization is trending down. Brian Schottenheimer, your offensive coordinator, didn't let you throw in the Dallas game. It's a boring, run-heavy offense that you're a part of in Seattle, and I'm sure that you're tired of that boring, run-heavy offense. I'm sure that you look at Saquon Barkley and see a lot of Saquon in yourself, Russell Wilson, and I'm sure that you would love to play along Saquon Barkley. So if the Giants got Russell Wilson, you get a quarterback that is an elite quarterback, not just a Stafford, not just a Kirk Cousins or a Carr or even a Jimmy G. Because as good as I think Jimmy G is, you're projecting. When you look at quarterbacks in the NFL, Andy Dalton's making a ton of money. Matt Ryan. I think that Russell Wilson is light years ahead of Matt Ryan. I mean, that game against the Green Bay Packers is a perfect example. Russell Wilson throws 3 or 4 interceptions, and Russell Wilson, in that NFC Championship game, he doesn't blink. And when the going gets tough, Russell Wilson is just about as good as handling adversity as any quarterback that I've ever seen. When it's time for winning time, Russell Wilson is nails. And he was unbelievable in that Green Bay game, where he threw 3 interceptions, was playing the worst game of his career, and he still managed to hit the long throw to Doug Baldwin, got the game to overtime. Russell Wilson wills his teams to win. He's the magic man. He's a magician back there in the pocket, okay? He's magic. You know, when you think you've got Russell Wilson, you don't. He single-handedly can dominate a game. How about the game in Minnesota, where it was played outdoors because the Humphrey Dome had collapsed, and it was literally -8 degrees out there. Russell Wilson got shut out for 3 quarters. It was a 9-0 score. And what Russell Wilson did, 4th quarter, just turns it on. Incredible. Leads Seattle back, scores 10 unanswered points in the 4th quarter to win. How about the next week in Carolina? Had a bad first half, but in the second half, Russell Wilson almost came back in that football game. He is the king of the comeback. And Russell Wilson, the bottom line is, if you have Russell Wilson and Saquon Barkley and Odell Beckham, you have a chance to have one of the best offenses in football. Look at the Kansas City Chiefs. That defense was a patchwork defense. This is an offensive football league. If you have Saquon Barkley, who I think Giants fans and a lot of NFL fans believe is literally going to be a top 10 player in the whole NFL next year, maybe even top 5. He's in his 2nd year. Years 2 through 5 are running backs' best years in the NFL. It's when they're explosive. It's when they're still healthy. Saquon Barkley is going to be unbelievable next year. Russell Wilson. You don't need an incredible offensive line with Russell Wilson. But Russell Wilson is a flat-out winner. If you put Russell Wilson on the New York Giants with Saquon Barkley, you're going to have a damn good chance to be in the playoffs and compete for Super Bowls. And that's what life is all about in the NFL. Now, if you don't go Russell Wilson, because the Russell Wilson thing is still far-fetched, and if you draft... So, here's the thing for the Giants fans to consider. First off, I'm getting tired of the Eli Manning who's going to replace him conversation. It's not nauseating. It's constant. It's very stressful to think about. So I would like the replacement to be, you go from Eli Manning to Russell Wilson, you go Hall of Famer to Hall of Famer. That would be absolutely perfect. I mean, Russell Wilson in that Super Bowl, if they ran the ball from the 1-yard line, he beats Tom Brady. He's a hero. That Seattle team was damn near a dynasty. So I look at Russell Wilson. What are you going to need to give up now to get Russell Wilson? I believe you need to give up this year's 6th overall pick. Just give it up. So think about it. If you're at number 6 anyway, you might be drafting a quarterback. No quarterback is as proven as Russell Wilson. Dwayne Haskins has played 1 year in college football. Drew Lock can't beat anybody good in college football. Kyler Murray is the shortest quarterback ever to enter the NFL. Daniel Jones has a has a really slow delivery from a talent standpoint. He's a developmental quarterback. Will Grier, these are all developmental question mark quarterbacks. So if you give Seattle the 6th pick, that very well could be your quarterback. So you're pretty much replacing Wilson with that 6th pick already. Then next year's 1st round pick. If the Giants get Russell Wilson, Eli Manning then is let go, because then that's about $14 million in cap money that you can spend for this year. If the Giants have Russell, a healthy Saquon Barkley, and Odell Beckham still on the roster, who's still probably a top 4 talent wide receiver in football, the expectations is that you compete with the Cowboys, and at the very least, it's a 10-win team with Russell Wilson in his prime. At the very least, you're making the postseason. If you make the postseason, your pick is then in the 20s. That isn't that good of a 1st round pick anyway. So you're giving then another 1st round pick to Seattle, which is going to be in the 20s. Then you can give up a 2nd round pick, and I hopefully would want it to be next year's, because then again, that 2nd round pick is pushed back, and I want to keep our 2nd round pick this year, which is valuable. If you're Seattle and you're Russell Wilson, Pete Carroll might be leaving. He's the oldest head coach in the NFL. He might go back to USC next year. Bottom line, when USC fires Clay Helton, which is inevitable at this stage. Clay Helton is not getting any good recruits. Why wouldn't Pete go back to the Pac-12? The Pac-12 is weak. He is a college coach. He was great in college. Seattle, that roster and everything, it's going to be a rebuild with John Schneider in Seattle, and Russell Wilson can see that as well. So if you're Wilson, I think it makes a lot of sense. Your brand, Christianity, spreading the word of the Lord, and also Sierra and her career and your family's well-being, your family's, first of all, your legacy will be improved in New York, but also the experiences that you will have in New York City for your platform, for your career, and for your life is pretty damn enticing if you are Russell Wilson. So it's an interesting thing to discuss, and his wife is unhappy in Seattle, and Colin Cowherd does have connections around the NFL. And I know that you might think Baker Mayfield and Colin Cowherd's takes are off. I like Colin Cowherd. I pretty much like a lot of guys that do sports broadcasting, because those guys are all successful. And why should you be the little guy and pretty much... why should you go after guys that are more successful than you? Why don't you just try to achieve their same level? Other thing I want to mention is an Odell Beckham trade rumor that Jay Glazer stated. Jay Glazer's pretty much projecting that last year, because in the middle of the season there was a big rift with the New York Giants and Odell Beckham, that would come forward again in the trade conversations, but that was more a prediction based on last year. So again, I don't know Odell Beckham, but I wouldn't mind getting rid of Odell Beckham, especially if we get some good picks back. I think there's some good wideouts in this class. But if you get Russell Wilson then I believe will take over this team. And even Odell Beckham will be excited to play with Russell Wilson. Everybody will be on board with having Russell Wilson. You then get your franchise quarterback, because there's a chance that this quarterback you're selecting, you need to at least be a good enough quarterback to at least get deep into the playoffs. You need this quarterback to at least be a Jared Goff or Dak Prescott, or possibly you need this quarterback to be a Mitchell Trubisky. And also Matt Nagy and Sean McVay, the guys that have the young quarterbacks, those guys are great coaches. And also in Dallas, that defense is a lot better than the New York Giants defense. So even though the argument is to have a younger quarterback and get a great defense around them, the Giants defense isn't that good. The Giants coaches are not the elite of the elite. McVay and Nagy are the elite of the elite. And also the defense is not that good. You have Pat Shurmur and a pretty average defense. You have Saquon Barkley. He's your greatest asset, and he is entering the prime of his career. Getting Russell Wilson would be an incredible guy. To go from Eli to Russell Wilson, I think people should be ecstatic at that decision. And if you only give away draft picks, if you give Seattle some capital to go into the following years, I think it's a pretty good decision. Even for Seattle, it's not a terrible decision because Seattle is going to be rebooting a little bit. They're going to be going into a little bit of a rebuild themselves because they're in purgatory. That's what I look at with the Seattle Seahawks. They're in purgatory. And when Jimmy G's healthy, they're the third wheel in that NFC West. Thank you guys for watching this video. Exciting breaking news here on a snowy Wednesday. Take care, y'all.